Hey all, and welcome back to Fuzzy Dirty Gaming and a day 3 update stroke Tornado Shot build guide for my League starter. So I decided to transition to Tornado Shot last night once I got to 93, just because I think it would be easier to kill Maven and Uber Elder. So I've now got all my Void Stones, I've done a couple of the big invitations, I'm mapping really well, it's feeling a little bit squishy, but overall the build is now in a position where everything I add to the build from now on is just going to make it better and better. So don't judge a build on how it is now. This is more getting into a state so that you can then scale it more and more and more with investment. So what changes do you need to make to transition to Tornado Shot? Now, this is not a build guide from scratch. This is a build guide from if you followed my Rain of Arrows build or you already have a Deadeye that's level 90, this is what you need to do. But predominantly, it's if you followed my Rain of Arrows guide and you're ready to transition, this is basically the bare bones of what you need to do. Once you leave your Rain of Arrows setup, you're going to have gear similar to what I did in my POB on day 2. You should really be level 90 minimum. I stayed on my Rain of Arrows to 93. The reason being, it is squishier on Tornado Shot and you are likely to die. So leveling past 93 until you get geared up can be a little bit difficult. Again, remember, this is purely meant for mapping, but it can melt bosses quite easily if you need it to. So there's only 2 items that I switched to go to Tornado Shot to then get an understanding of what I need to do next. And you'll probably need to do exactly the same. What we needed to do is get some Ailment immunity because you lose 50% from being Raider. And we need to find 40% spell suppression because again, we lose it from our ascendancy. Now, spell suppression first, nice and easy. You were 100% on Raider, or you should be because it's pretty much all from the tree. So you're going to have 40% that you need to find. Now, there's a few things you can do. This node here, if you're short 3%, is a really nice one to take. But what I tended to do, this mastery here gives you 15%, and you should have evasion on all of your gear. If not, you're building your character wrong. That just leaves us 25% left to get. You're then going to buy lesser Eldritch Icons and roll them on your gloves until you get 5% spell suppression. You've now got 20 left to find. Fractured 10% gloves, fractured 10% boots. Job done. Your spell suppression capped. That's the easy and the cheap part. The difficult part, if you want to be Ailment immune, which I would recommend, it's just so comfy, is getting 100% when essentially all we've got is 20% from tree. Because we're losing the unique boots that add 30% and we're losing the 50% from Raider. These 4 nodes here are the only Ailment avoidance we have. Now there's 2 options. I think I went with the wrong one, but I'll give you both the options. First option, you need a pair of boots with 55% avoid ailments on it. I'll link a video to a previous build. It's got bookmarks to each item. I crafted the boots exactly the same. You roll your implicits with grand Eldritch Icons or with lessers and then try and elevate them up. And then you craft your boots with deafening essences of loathing until you've got decent boots with 55% avoid ailments. These cost you about 2 divines. If you're lucky, it could be cheaper, but if you're unlucky, it could be more. And then to cap it out, you need to craft 25% on your chest. I don't recommend going this route. I recommend using a unique jewel. The reason I didn't is I assumed it was really expensive. It's 1.5 divines. And this is a jewel that we're talking about. Ancestral Vision, a new jewel added in 321. Modifiers to chance to suppress spell damage also applied to chance to avoid ailments at 50%. We will be 100% minimum spell suppression capped. You could also go over. So we're going to have 50% ailment avoidance from 1 jewel slot, and I think it's well worth it. There is another option, which is Storm Shroud Jewel, but they're 8 divines. So with this jewel and the 20% from your tree, you only need to make up 30%. What I would recommend you do is you buy the lesser Eldritch Icons because they're cheap. They'll give you 18% avoid ailments. Then you just need to find 12%, which you can actually craft on the crafting bench. Or you could roll with maybe Screaming Essences of Loathing. But what I would recommend is similar to me, you buy a fractured spell suppression base, you craft them with either life or movement speed essences, wait till you got an open suffix, craft your ailment avoidance. It's going to work out probably cheaper, and you're going to free up your prefixes to craft either the Gravicious, Fizz taken as Ellie, or increase life and increase mana. In terms of gear, as I said, I haven't swapped anything other than gloves and boots. You will need to maybe re-roll new implicits. I've run out of currency. Don't go pride. It doesn't do anything. I just don't have any currency left. I'm aiming for either hatred or grace. So I only made 1 more change other than a big tree respec, which I'll put the POB in for the tree you want to aim for. And that is I've gone hatred. Now at the moment, it's going to be a DPS loss because I don't do much physical damage. but it's easier to scale DPS with Hatred than it is Anger. Anger is just flat damage, and then it will scale from increased elemental damage, but the more you have, the kind of less you gain from it. Hatred gives you Fizz as extra. So the more Fizz you get, the more cold it's going to give you, and then your percentage gets added onto it. It scales much, much better than Anger. So at the moment, I'm probably a DPS loss, but I would recommend you do the same. Go Hatred. Other than that, the links are the same. You just swap out 2 jewels from your chest. So we're obviously dropping Rain of Arrows for Tornado Shot, and then we drop in Mirage Archer for GMP. What I would recommend, if you can afford it, because they're going to go up and up in price, is pick yourself up an Anomalous Tornado Shot gem. When you do end up getting some Fizz damage in the build, this is quite a big DPS increase. It also means, because we're going to convert the other 40 elsewhere, you don't do any physical damage, so you don't have to worry about physical reflect, and it can also help keep Trinity proccing if we do too much cold damage. To get this sort of setup to work, you need big lightning, big cold. You can have fire as well, doesn't matter, but you need both. I think the bow I've got is ideal when I multi-mod it, because I'm going to put crit chance and then percentage Fizz, and that Fizz then gets turned into cold and different elementals from the Tornado Shot gem. Other than that, no changes. I've still got my 5-link ballistas. I'm still using Manaforge Arrow 4-link. This is just way too good to drop, even if it means we take the odd death because we run no guard skill. Having Ensnaring Arrow, maximum power charges, and maximum frenzy charges automatically is insane. And then when I swapped, I didn't have the best time when I swapped because I didn't have much gear that was decent. A lot of it was really league start gear. So it's then at that point, I would run my first map, realize this needs changing, and then start to stack things up. One thing you will notice when you switch is you will be much squishier. By 95% chance to evade, it's more going to be like 65 or 70. You're probably going to have less life, and you might take the odd death. However, you're going to be killing stuff off screen a lot of the time. The key defenses for this build is that you don't get hit. And I know it sounds like, oh, it's glass cannon. It is if you stand there and let yourself get hit, but you won't. With instant leech as well, even if you get hit, you're going to get your life back so quickly. As I said, I've done Maven, done Uber, done 2 pretty juiced invitations with not very nice mods, and done lots of T16 mapping, and it's absolutely fine. I've taken the odd death, more than I did on Rain of Arrows, but now I can scale the build up. Once my DPS gets to a point where I don't need it to go anymore, then I'll start on the defenses, but the defense part is going to come in a whole different video because it is expensive to get defenses into the build. Now, this is just an entry-level Tornado Shot. There's no omniscience. There's no complicated gear. This is just some rare items thrown together, and it works. So like I said, you're going to have a big respec on your tree to do. I'm running a Brutal Restraint with lots of kind of projectile damage, movement speed, things like that. Lethal Prod would probably be better if you can get, double damage and Intimidate. I think it's going to be better. Now, there's a few masteries I want to run through. This is very different to the tree that I put in the earlier guide because we didn't really know what these masteries were going to do and how they were going to perform. I've also using this cluster jewel for a specific reason. Now, this was a divine. If lots of people watch this video, it'll probably be 4 or 5 because these are hard to roll. All I was bothered about is Sadist and Overshock. Overshock gives me more ailment effect for lightning damage, which is how I'm getting 30 to 40% of shock on normal bosses and 20 to 25 on pinnacle bosses. And then the other one, because we do fire, cold, and lightning damage, you get all of these increased added together, so it's 60%. Luckily, medium cluster jewels, dirt cheap. They cost me 14 chaos each, just streamlined and repeater. Now, I carried this over from Rain of Arrows. If you want the perfect jewel for this build, it's probably a bow, 3 passive cluster, and you want arcing shot on it. It gives you more crit chance as your arrows travel further than any other 2 attack passives you get are fine. They're fairly easy to roll or buy them. They shouldn't be mega expensive. I've purchased a Watcher's Eye with precision damage, nothing else on it. And then my rare jewels are not very good. This is why I'm thinking I should have gone that Ailment jewel route because I'm not giving much up from getting rid of these rubbish jewels. And then the only other thing I'm doing because I'm now going Hatred is I'm getting all these extra cold stuff here and then converting the rest of the fizz to gold. I don't get much benefit from this in a minute because I haven't finished my bow. So what I'll do at the end of the video is just put my full Maven fight on there. There's one death where I decide it's great to track her beam all the way when she's firing it at me and die. Other than that, super comfortable. Uber, I won't put it on because the fight's quite a bit longer. It's messier because I'm not very good at it, but the DPS is very good. Like, you phase their health in about 2 seconds. So even if you're terrible at the fight, you should be able to do it. So for Pantheons, because we're going to be Ailment immune again, it's up to you what you take. I've hardly had any Vessels drops, so I'm not really upgrading them. Again, if you're on Syrian Exile, do Burning Ground. I've just got these on because this is what I used for Uber Elder. Flask, stay exactly the same. Diamond with crit, Jade with evasion, armor with armor, and then Quicksilver with increased attack speed. Now, we mentioned the Cluster Jewel and this Overshock to get more lightning ailments. I've paired that with 50% increased non-damaging ailments from critical strikes. And then this node here, which is amazing. You can actually see the enemy's health bar chunk off when it activates. Every 1 in 4 hits, essentially, the monster elemental resistance gets inverted. Now, I don't have any exposure. Now, I'm not a raider, so they're going to have their maximum elemental resistances, which means every third hit, they're going to have minus big resistances. You hit a huge lightning roll, their shot goes to 20, 30, 40%, depending on what you hit. And because you attack really quickly, this is going to keep cycling through. Without this, I think our shock would probably be near non-existent, even with those additions, because we don't have base lightning damage on the skill. We've just got the damage from the bow. I mentioned here, you need this mastery to cap spell suppression. Instantly, do not go without this. This keeps me alive so many times where I know it can't one-shot me, so I'll just stand there trading. They'll chunk me to 75% of my health. It'll go straight back up to 100. Don't live without this mastery. This one, give or take, 50 life, but I've found life a bit of a struggle in the tree I've gone for, so I've just gone for that little bit of extra life. My anointment, I've got Fury Bolts because it's super, super cheap. Go for something that's more damage. It's probably going to say it's high voltage because it's 100% crit chance against shocked enemies. That's pretty decent. Or you can maybe try and get something with even more ailment effect if you wanted to. What you could do, if you didn't want to take these nodes yet because Hatred's not really offering that much, these nodes are not too bad if you don't want to take these ones because you get a little bit more extra ailment effect again, which is really good. And that's kind of it. It's a very, very quick build guide. I just wanted to show you what you need to do to transition. And it probably will feel bad when you switch, but then's the important bit of, right, is it damage I'm lacking, or am I really so squishy that I can't get through a map even with lots of damage? Is it speed that I'm missing? And then look for your upgrades. So with all that covered up, I just wanted to go through a few uniques that I'd recommend if you don't have particularly good gear in certain slots. So if you don't have decent rings, the Taming is a pretty decent ring. Good elemental resistances, good LE damage, and then increased damage at attack speed, along with increased damage per ailment on an enemy. Downsides are you can't craft non-challenge skills and it doesn't have any life on it. An amulet I would consider if you don't have attribute problems, because you might struggle for int and strength with this amulet. Yoga Suffering is really good, especially if you set up like me where you've got cold and lightning damage. Your lightning damage already shocks. This makes your cold damage shock as well. And we're increasing all those ailment effects. It's very likely, if I put this onto my build, I would get 50% shock and maximum chill, which would be really, really, really nice. However, I don't have the attributes to be able to do this, but it's something to look for because this isn't going to be an expensive amulet and it does bring a lot of damage to the build. But again, no life, no non-challenge skills. And that's the problem with a lot of uniques that people use on Tornado Shot is they don't have life on. So you see people running around in less than 3k life. Yes, you're probably going to kill stuff pretty quickly, but as soon as something hits you, you're going to die really, really quickly. So other things, if you have the money to look at, there are Divergent Inspiration, reduced mana cost. This is probably really expensive. It normally is. And there is a Greater Multiple Projectiles that also has reduced mana cost. I wouldn't necessarily go for this because at some point you might want to buy Awakened GMP, but again, that's really expensive. So if we just look at Greater Multiple Projectile support, you can see here again, 20% reduced mana cost for Anomalous, but it's expensive. It is very, very expensive. Now, in regards to Endgame, I don't actually know whether I'm going Omniscience, because the more and more changes I make to the game, the harder it gets to scale it and build it without spending lots of money. So when it first came out, it was massively overpowered. It had like, I think it was 2% resistances and 2% LE pen per 15 or something like that. And it dropped all the time. It was like a 1 in 4 drop. It was a 5C amulet. Now it's nerfed. It's much, much rarer. And with the new nerfs to the mana reservation efficiencies, I think you're going to need stuff like mana on gear, level 4 enlightens, and do lots of other tweaks to get your auras into your build. I've not decided what I'm doing yet for like an endgame setup, but I don't think it's going to include Omniscience, but I really need a few days to actually work it out. So at the moment, there is no endgame guide. This is just a video to show you how to transition. you're more than welcome to go Omniscience. I'm sure it still absolutely wrecks. I just don't want to bring a guard out on it because you are going to have to do a lot of balancing and all your gear is going to have to be perfectly set up. That covers what I wanted to in the video. I'll play out with the Maven encounter and hopefully be back in a few days with the full build guide. Thanks for watching, take care, and see you in the next one.
Pain will be returned tenfold. Space aligns. Behold your connection.
I will have what I want. This will not be an escape. Scurry! Scurry! Stand still.
Death may endure.
Cascade of pain.
Resistance will be punished. Time contorts. Scurry, scurry.
My irritation is growing. This will not be an escape. Scurry, scurry! A cascade of pain. Do what I say.
Death may reign.
Stand still. Stand still.
Stop resisting. Reality bends. Punishment inescapable.
Arrogant toy. Stand still. Death will not be an escape. Scurry, scurry. A cascade of pain. Stand still. My collection is complete.
You forced an intervention, Nomad. You have proved your might. You have proved your ignorance.
The toy